Hello, hello! Welcome to Preserving Home, where we learn to preserve food in flavorful, creative, sustainable, and healthy ways in the home kitchen. I'm your home kitchen hostess, Laura, and today we are going to lacto-ferment carrots. Ooh, aren't these pretty? Alright, so we have these gorgeous carrots, and these are multicolored. We even have some purple ones. Isn't that nice? Haven't tried them yet, so hopefully they are tasty. First thing I'm going to do is give them a little rinse. We have all these gorgeous fronds. These green things, and they are edible. If you wanted to do something else with those, sometimes if you were really creative, you could take these, wash them up, cook them. They might be a little, woody, so I would suggest maybe blending them up. But for now, we're just gonna set those aside. I'm gonna just cut those off. Maybe we'll do something with those later, but for now, they're gonna go over here. It's always nice to have like a little, container or something, throw the compost in, throw the unnecessary things in. Alright, I think we're gonna need at least another bunch. Get that put off there. As you can see, I have a lot of carrots. We'll do, oh, look at that nice big one there. So we're going to do some lacto-fermenting today, and that's basically just using the natural microbiomes that are already present on your produce to preserve the vegetables using salt. So we're going to give these carrots a little rinse, clean them up, and then we will be getting them cut up for our preservation method today. Gonna give them a little scrub. And if you want to, you could peel them. I'm not a big fan of peeling, just because A, it's gonna eat up some of my time, and we're all a little bit limited on the amount of time we have nowadays. So I like to keep it simple. And plus, by not peeling them, I'm leaving more of those little good lactobacillus microbes on the skin of these carrots to hopefully give our ferment a little boost. But you could peel them if you wanted. And the only benefit to peeling them, your end result is going to be a little bit less bitter. And sometimes the peel can add a little bit of bitterness to the vegetable. Giving them a little scrub. Nice pretty yellow carrots. And if you're a home gardener and you're growing your own carrots, you don't want to harvest them too early, because it's actually, once they have a little kiss of frost, that they will actually get a little sweeter for you. So not a bad thing to leave your carrots in a little late in the season. The other thing you might want to have on hand when you are getting ready to do brine pickling or lacto-fermenting or salt pickling, goes by many names, is have some cabbage leaves on hand. Any leaf from the brassica family will work just fine. Cabbage leaves work really great if you have if you grow grapes on your property and you have some grape leaves. Grape leaves are really good too. But for today, we're going to use these cabbage leaves, and I'll show you a method that's super easy of using these as your what's called the primary follower, and that's just the thing that's going to go in the ferment that's going to keep your stuff from coming up out of the brine. If it's under the brine, all is fine. Remember that. So I'm going to give these a little rinse as well. These little colanders are great. So they slide out, and everything can kind of just drain in there. Give it a little rinse. So with anything that you're working with in the kitchen, of course, you always want to wash your hands beforehand. Make sure everything that you're using is nice and clean. I'm going to bring my supplies, some of my supplies over here. All right, so next step, gotta cut up these pretty carrots. And And I'm just gonna have a little container here to put my trimmings in because we don't want all the junk up here. So, ooh, check that out on the inside. It's yellow. So you can cut these up in multiple ways. You can cut them into sticks. You could shred it and make like a carrot slaw. Or today I'm gonna make little rings. So they'll be nice for finger foods. Look real pretty in the jar. So we're gonna go ahead and cut all those up. I like to use these glass mason jars for my ferments, just especially for small batches. There's lots of other jars you can use, crocks, ceramic ones. You want to make sure though that you don't use anything that's going to leach any metals, so no aluminum, no cast iron. It's okay to use, of course, like metal when you're cutting things up, but for storage, as this will be acidic, you don't want to use anything that will corrode over time. If we were doing this in like a large batch, I might use food grade buckets. But again, with plastic that can corrode over time, so you want to make sure it's something that's food grade. And you want to make sure all the pieces are about the same size so that they will cook, quote unquote, at about the same rate. Try to get away. So we have all these beautiful carrots cut up now, and there's actually enough to fill 2 jars. We're just gonna focus on this one for now. See on the inside? Beautiful. Have a couple carrots left over, so I might do something extra with those, maybe cook them later, maybe snack on them. We'll see how they taste. So I have my jar ready. I have my vegetable all cut up. You want to make sure that it's kind of, shaken down a little bit. So with this method of lacto-fermenting, which is could be categorized as brine pickling, we are going to take some brine, and all it is for whole sliced or cut up vegetables, you're going to do a gallon of water to a half cup of salt. Just some caveats though. Your salt should be non-iodinized. You could use sea salt, you could use Himalayan salt, you could just use the regular salt from the store, the table salt that's non-iodinized, just because you don't want the iodine to keep any of the good probiotics and bacteria at bay. The other thing in regards to the water is you don't want to use public water, just for the simple fact that I know when I lived at a place where there was public water, they tend to use things like chlorine in the water, and that's going to also kill off your good bacteria that are going to cause us to ferment. So you can use things like store-bought distilled water or store-bought spring water. I'm fortunate enough here to live where it's well water, so we're going to use well water that's been put into this gallon jug, and I've already added my half cup of salt to this. Just give that a little shake. If for some reason you didn't want to make a whole gallon of it, or however much you thought you would need, we could simply add about, for this size jar, which is 8 cups or 64 ounces mason jar, you could add about 2 tablespoons of salt, give or take. You always want to taste test things, make sure it's not too salty, less salty, and make sure that the flavor is there, because that's what it's all about. It's all about the flavor. Because if it doesn't taste good, we're not going to want to eat it anyway, right? We've already added salt to this, like I said, easy peasy. You're just going to pour that on in there. And as long as everything is covered by the brine, it's going to be just fine. So as you see, as I poured in that brine, things started to kind of float up towards the top. So if they do that, they're gonna go bad because they're out of that brine, which is going to preserve our vegetables. And as you see, I left a little bit of headspace up here at the top because the other thing that's gonna happen when you are fermenting is things are going to contract and expand. So you don't want to fill this too full. So to keep those vegetables submerged under the brine, we can do a couple different things. We can use these cabbage leaves that I talked about earlier, and you can just simply rip off a piece and that's gonna, I think, fit real well in there. And now keep everything, you just wanna tuck that under the lip of the jar, and that's gonna keep all those nice little carrots down underneath the brine water. If we want to, we could use what's called a weight, and with these mason jars, a mason-sized jelly jar fits really well into this opening for a wide mouth mason jar. Some other things, again, you don't want to use anything that's going to be a corrosive material. So I have some old baby jars on hand or some shot glasses, just plain old glass. And I'm just going to plug that in there, and that's going to just help to keep the primary follower in place and not allow anything to pop up out of the brine. So we could kind of stop there. If we wanted to, we could add some spices. Actually, probably want to add those before we added the primary follower and the weight. But for this particular jar, we're just gonna do as is. Just because we don't want anything flying into the jar, we don't want dirt or any dust to get in there, you can simply cover it with a paper towel secured with a rubber band. Or we can do something like an airlock, where you would take one of these airlock seals and place that on here. Just simply screw that in place, and what that's going to allow me to do, it comes with this nifty little gadget, and that's just going to suck all the extra air out of there. Because our lactobacillus microbes are anaerobic, so we want to get rid of all the oxygen that we can, and of course anything that's under the level of the water is going to be anaerobic. That's why if your vegetables pop up out of the water, they aren't going to be good anymore. So this one's pretty much good to go. We'll set them aside. And you know, this one, I think we might add some ginger to that, add a scoop or two of ginger, add some brine. We'll put on our little covering, and we're gonna wait a few weeks. So as we're waiting, you wanna set your jar in something or on a plate, because as these vegetables soak up the brine, they're gonna expand, and that's gonna push all the contents of the jar up and out. So it might overflow. Some other things you might see, it might be a little bit bubbly, it might have a little bit of a funky smell, not a bad smell. If anything's ever putrid or tastes disgusting or smells really bad, not good. You want to, at that point, toss it. Don't try to save it. If your nose tells you it's bad, if your taste buds tell you it's bad, it's probably bad. So I actually already made some of these nice pickled carrots a few weeks ago. So we're gonna do a little bit of taste testing. Open up our jars, see how they did, and go from there. Why don't you join me? So we have fermented our carrots. They've been sitting for, you want to taste test them pretty regularly, make sure they're doing okay, because flavor is going to be one of your primary tools of deciding whether or not your ferment is done. It's gonna taste a little bit sour, they're not gonna be quite as crisp anymore, and this water that's in the jar, the brine, is gonna start to get a little bit cloudy. So at least, give it 3 to 5 days, taste test. Might need a little bit longer, might need, just depends on if your location is warm or cool. Warmer locations, it's going to speed up the process. Cooler locations, going to slow it down. These are actually going for a little bit too long, but they're still fine. That fermenting is just still taking place. So I think it's been about 2 weeks for the one, maybe 2.5 for the other. Some pretty yellow carrots that weren't super sweet. So I decided, what can I do with these to make them a little bit more flavorful. So this one on the right is just carrots and salt. So nice little snack. This one on the left, we actually added some ginger and some fennel seeds to this one to give it a little bit more of a flavor. May even get creative and make some carrot cake from this one. And we can eyeball on some of those recipes. So with sweeter vegetables such as carrots, sweet equals sugar, and sugar can attract the growth of things like yeast, specifically calm yeast. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have a little bit of yeast here up at the top. Fermenting is not for the faint of heart. So let's take a look here. And these little, for these particular jars, I use these airlock lids. Places like the Perfect Pickler use these, and they're kind of nice because you can just take a mason jar ring, and it has this little silicone seal up on the top, has a little nipple in it, and it allows gases to escape. If excess liquid flows up that far, it will allow that to escape, and it allows, keeps everything sealed up, no dirt, bugs, etc. are going to get into your food. So we'll just take this off, and actually, surprisingly, I don't know how many of y'all want to see this, but this is what it looks like on the top. There's a little bit of bubbliness, and thankfully no yeasties here. So we are going to go ahead and pull out this weight, and then there's some fennel seeds hanging out in there. I wouldn't suggest eating anything that may have been above the brine again, so we'll just stick you over there to clean up. And for this particular ferment, we used a broccoli leaf. So another member of the brassica family, and that held up really well, kept all those carrots underneath the brine. So we'll toss that in our compost bucket as well. It smells great. It smells like ginger. We'll go ahead and plate some of these carrots. We'll do a little bit of a taste testing then. Alright, so that's carrot jar number 1. And then this is my second jar of carrots. That was just the salt. Go ahead and do the same thing. Oh yay, no yeasties here either. So we'll take our weight out and our primary follower of the broccoli leaves. And we'll stick a couple in a little dish here for us to try. Now, this one was in the weight, and you see how like the color is a little bit off with that? It's a little bit brown, maybe a little bit squishy. I think it may have escaped and gone up into and been exposed to air. So I'm gonna say that this piece isn't any good anymore, especially when compared to that nice bright yellow color of all the carrots that were underneath the brine. So we're gonna toss that one as well. So now that these are done, we can do some taste testing, and these jars can be stored in the fridge. You can just pop a mason jar lid on there, or you can break them down and put them in smaller mason jars to store. The fridge is going to slow your fermenting down. It's not going to stop it, but it's going to slow it down significantly, so you'll store anywhere from 6 to 12 months in your refrigerator. The other thing that we can do just to kind of test whether or not these are done, I have a pH tester, and anything below the level of 4.6 pH is going to be good. And we're about 3.5 for that jar, and that one's about 3.5 as well. Let's taste test these. This was the ginger one. Much better fermented, a little bit of ginger flavor coming through. Delicious. And then this one was just the plain salt, so we'll test that out. Nice little carrot pickle. Still very good, but the one with the ginger has excellent flavor. And that's the beautiful thing about fermenting and preserving food. Each time it's going to be a little bit different, depending on the season, depending on the produce, depending on the time, depending on what was in the air that day. This is just a little thumbprint of the time when it was made, and that's why we are preserving food in our home kitchen to recreate and capture that artisan method of cooking. So thank you for joining us for Preserving Home today. If you liked today's video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and please in the comments leave your questions, leave your ideas for future videos. Bye bye.